At issue this Sunday morning, will Harrisburg solve the SEPTA funding crisis? We're looking for answers from key lawmakers from the House and Senate. And SEPTA's service cuts are adding complication to the start of the school year in Philadelphia, with students and parents scrambling to come up with a transportation plan. I'll speak to the superintendent of the school district.
NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. Students head back to school in Philadelphia starting tomorrow. But for many, simply getting to the building could be a challenge. SEPTA is moving forward with steep service cuts because it hasn't gotten the money it says it needs to make up a budget deficit. It is shortening or eliminating bus routes that students use to get to school. Both the House and the Senate have passed legislation that would fund SEPTA, but the two sides disagree on the funding source. SEPTA itself says the Senate bill doesn't work for them because it uses capital dollars that it needs. Well, I went to Harrisburg this week and I asked Governor Shapiro about getting to a deal. The legislation last week, either in the House or the Senate, did it get you any closer?
It did, because what the action last week by the Senate and the action 5 times prior by the House now has shown that both chambers believe that we've got to fund mass transit at the number that I proposed in my budget nearly 200 days ago.
Are they any closer to getting
that
into
number
how to do
of
it?
nearly $300 million, in addition to what the Commonwealth has already invested, to going to these mass transit agencies.
For more on the effort to solve SEPTA's budget deficit, we're joined in studio by the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Joanna McClinton. She is a Democratic state representative from Philadelphia. You also represent part of Delaware County. Thanks for joining us.
So glad to be here this Sunday.
So let me start with your constituents and what this is going to look like, because SEPTA runs through your area. What are you expecting these changes to look like in this area?
So tomorrow, school starts for our children. We have throughout the city 50,000 children out of our 200,000 school children that rely on transit to get to school, to get home, to get to an after-school activity, to get to a job. So in my district, in Delco, starts the 13 trolley, the 11 trolley, and then the 34 is right down from my house at 60th and Qualps Creek. So people take the trolley to get into Center City, to get to University of Penn, to go work at the hospitals, to get to where they're going. They also take the 46 bus route to get to the Market Frankfurt L in my district, which for many years when I was a public defender, I would run for the bus, wait at the L, and I'd tell everybody I'll be at court in 10 minutes. Because you can see City Hall from 60th and Market. I'm going to be downtown in 10 minutes. Yeah, it's 5 stops, but I'm going to be there in 10 minutes. What we're going to see is a change in the pace, a change in the schedule, and all of this could be avoided if we can get back to the table and resolve this in Harrisburg ASAP.
Now, the House passed a transit funding and accountability bill. I think it was August 11th. The House hasn't been back in session yet. How do you see this playing out? Do you think there's any possibility that the House comes back to pass anything else on its own? Or do you really think the next time you're going to be back in Harrisburg as a body is when there is a deal that both chambers have agreed on?
Well, it's well overdue for a deal. The governor gave his budget proposal in February. We started moving budget bills in the springtime. We had a deadline of June 30th to do both the state budget and, of course, transit, because it's important not only in the Philadelphia region, but also to our colleagues, to our constituents out in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and so on and so forth. So we want to go back to session when there's a full compromise. We sent over measures, we sent over a budget, we sent transit, we passed it last session 4 separate times. Since we've been back this session now, we passed it again. And we, of course, included the Republican demands from our colleague right here in Philadelphia, Senator Picozzi, wants more accountability, wants more transparency. We included those measures hoping to reach compromise. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, but we are prepared to return as soon as we get a deal.
You mentioned compromise. The governor talked about that the other day. He said that everybody's going to have to compromise. Are there things that you can point to that you can say, House Democrats are willing to compromise on this?
Absolutely. The fact that every single time we've passed transit, it's been bipartisan. We're showing our Senate Republican friends the way. I get a lot of feedback that that there's so many different Republicans that do not want to fund transit. Well, there are 23 Democrats who want to fund transit. You only need 26 votes to pass the bill. We have ours passed every time across the aisle. It's time for the Senate Republican leadership to go across the aisle to broker the deal with the Democrats and with the Republicans in their caucus who want to champion this, who say that they believe in it for their constituents to get it done. We've run out of excuses, and unfortunately, we're running out of time.
The Senate Republicans have included in their bill that they passed this fund, a transit trust fund, that they would. The idea is that they would take money out of that for 2 years to fund transit. SEPTA has said that that doesn't work for them. The Department of Transportation says that that doesn't work because that money is used for capital projects. Senate Republicans have sort of listed some numbers of what's in there, saying that there is $1 billion that is not allocated for capital projects right now. Is there $1 billion that could be used in some way from that fund, even temporarily?
Unfortunately not. And what we need is not a temporary fix. SEPTA didn't just get into this problem. Pittsburgh Regional Transit didn't get into this problem. It starts with the pandemic, when ridership started to drop, when our school children were going to school from laptops and Chromebooks at home. And because their income dropped for so many years, we needed to raise investment. And that is why as soon as we flipped the chamber at the end of 2022, we continued to pass measures to fund transit. We cannot have a temporary solution. We'll just find ourselves, Lauren, in this perpetual cycle of temporary solutions, quickly trying to patch a hole. We don't want to patch a hole. We literally want to fill it and ensure that this is sustainable investment that all of our transit systems, especially SEPTA, can rely on for the future. We can't keep grasping our breaths trying to figure out what's going to happen today or tomorrow.
And I know that there's concern about those capital projects, and including for safety improvements. Is there a way to backfill that money where you could take money out of it now, maybe to use it as a line of credit, for lack of a better term, but backfill that money to get it back in there for those capital projects and maybe come up with some sort of compromise?
We'd have to create new revenue, and that's something there has not been agreement on. When the Governor Josh Shapiro, gave his budget address in February, he gave a few ways we could raise revenue. He said we should regulate skill games. We should raise the minimum wage. We should legalize marijuana in the Commonwealth. We should make all these efforts in order to create new revenue so that we have the money to invest in our public schools and, of course, to fund our transit systems. We sent over most of those measures, and we have not seen action from the Senate Republicans yet. Nothing on the minimum wage bill, marijuana legalization. They actually voted it up immediately. My joke has been it went up in smokes because we sent it on a Monday before the week was out. They voted it up just to let it be. Nothing occurred. We've been waiting on them now for 2 years to do skill games. They said that they would do it, that they had a consensus. No bill has come about. So
can you start that in the House? Could you start a skill game bill in the House?
But it's like so many other measures. At some point, we need to just have a compromise, a complete agreement, because we do all the heavy lifting just to see the barbells fall down and injure us and hurt our communities.
The fact that this has been so difficult this year, especially when you have something like SEPTA at stake, is this a policy difference, or do you think that this is political? There is a re-election ahead, a re-election year ahead for the governor next year, for example.
This is Republicans politicizing everything. This is Republicans saying they want to make everything great again, including our country, but failing at the job. This is Republicans not standing up, being able to govern. Because regardless of where you live and who your constituents are, we come into that Capitol with the mindset of we've got to work together in order to not only make the sausage, but take care of our responsibilities. This is Republicans dropping the ball, saying they don't care about us. But we implore them in this hour, everything that's happened so far, let it be the past. But the end of this August, let's get back to Harrisburg and fix these problems, because we can do it together.
When our coverage of the SEPTA funding fight continues, we'll hear from someone on the other side of the political aisle and the other side of the state Capitol building. My interview with the Republican State Senate President Pro Tem, straight ahead.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
We're back now on NBC10 at Issue with more on the SEPTA funding crisis. The House and Senate are at an impasse when it comes to agreeing on a budget. Before the break, you heard from the Democratic Speaker of the State House of Representatives. And now we're joined by the Republican State Senate President Pro Tem Kim Ward. Welcome, Senator Ward. Great to see you.
Nice to see you also.
So let's start with where things stand. Is there any movement? Do you feel like things have moved forward at all since the session that the Senate had?
No, I don't feel like there's been much forward motion. I think there are talks that are continuing. We'll see what happens. But, you know, at the end of all of this, as it's been, you know, it's made great media. For 2 weeks, we've been talking about the Mass Transit Trust Fund, which is positive because hardly anybody knew about it, including many of us. But at the end of the day, the governor can release those funds without legislation. He can release them today because they're held by PennDOT. They're under his administration. He can avert this shutdown right now in the next hour if he wants to. If he wants to.
So you're talking about this Transit Trust Fund, which is part of the Senate bill. That's where a lot of the money would come from to fund transit, including SEPTA. But SEPTA has said that doesn't work for them. They need that money for capital projects. So, you know, how is it funding SEPTA if you're using SEPTA money that it says it needs for something else? So
it's not SEPTA money, number one. It's the entire state's mass transit, public transit trust fund.
There's a silo of money, though, that is designated for SEPTA.
Sure. And they have given us projects. We ask for the projects. They have equaled, like, I don't know, a little over $1 billion for the next 5 years, or $1.8 billion for the next 5 years. There is a lot of that money that is not right now earmarked for anything. And that trust fund is for operational and capital projects, not just capital projects. But beyond that, in the next few years, they'll continue to have money put into that account, probably another $2 billion. You know what I think? What they say they want is a continuous flow of money. They don't want to use any of that on a permanent basis, and I get that on a permanent basis. But short term, you want to avert these shutdowns. That money's there. The governor can release it today, with or without the legislature.
So, are you thinking that if they were to figure out a way to do this, and they've said that it doesn't work for them, but if there was some way to backfill the money or figure something out, would the legislature then go back to the drawing board to figure out a sustainable solution, which is what SEPTA says it needs?
Sure. And they could have sent us...
Why not just do it right now?
Right. They could have sent us back a compromise on what we sent to them. Well, we continue to look for that sustainable source. And one of those sustainable sources that does not raise Pennsylvanians' taxes is gaming. We are looking at it. It's on the table. It is, you know, for those that say that's not a sustainable source, I just ask them to please look and see what the casinos have done in Pennsylvania since they've been here. Every year, it's a very reliable source of money coming into the tax coffers.
What is taking so long, though, on skill games? You're talking about these machines. People might see them in corner stores or in bars. They're not currently regulated by the state. The governor did put that in his budget as a place to potentially get money. Both sides have been talking about it for a while. I've heard support for it on both sides. What's taking so long?
There is support for it on both sides. I think it would be good if the governor would just come out and lead on it and say, let's do this. Let's look at this. Let's do this. Because right now it's sitting on the table. There is some agreement, a pretty high percentage of agreement on most of the issues that pertains to gaming. There is still a dispute over the tax rate, which I think can be resolved. Just need to sit down at the table and work it out. That is a source that does not affect taxpayers. I know that the House Democrats have said over and over, we have sent them 5 bills. But every single bill would have resulted in a tax increase for Pennsylvanians. So if they want to send us a 6th bill that doesn't result in a general tax increase for sales or PIT or anything for all of Pennsylvania, we would probably be happy and interested in looking at that bill.
We are heading into nothing happens, as you know, nothing happens in a vacuum in the political world, not in Harrisburg, not in Washington. We are heading into an election year, a potential re-election campaign for Governor Shapiro's. The treasurer, Stacey Garrity, just announced her run for governor against him. Is this about politics? Do you want the governor to look bad?
No, this isn't about making the governor look bad, because as I said, the governor can stop this. He won't look bad if he stops this. It's not about making him look bad. It's about protecting taxpayers' wallets. I mean, the House sends us bills, and every single bill will result, maybe not this year, but maybe this year, or next year, for sure, the year after, it will result in a tax increase. Because when I talk about the whole budget, let's talk about Medicaid. We have an additional $2 billion commitment from the state this year to cover Medicaid. There is not money falling off of trees here in Pennsylvania. The governor did his budget 6 months ago. It was $4.6 billion more dollars than we had in revenue. And the revenue that he used was from recreational marijuana, which of course is not legal. And he did not include the $2 billion additional money for Medicaid. So he put out a wish list, but it wasn't a real budget. It was a real tough place to start because it didn't have real funding, and it didn't include things that we are committed to cover. Big things, $2 billion it didn't include, $2 billion.
What do you think a deal ends up looking like?
I wish I could tell you. I can't. You know, every day there's, well, not every day, but, you know, every few days there's some papers moving back and forth, but I can't tell you what the final papers will look like.
After those interviews on Thursday, I spoke with SEPTA's general manager Friday, again about that transit fund. He said he's going through the clarifications Republicans have sent, and he says he supposes all options are being considered.
Taking from one pot to give to the other is not a sustainable solution. It could be a quick fix, I suppose, but that's for them to decide. But we need to focus on the moment, and the moment right now is on service.
Well, students in the Philadelphia School District head back to school tomorrow. How is the district dealing with the impact of the SEPTA service cuts? Their message to families coming up.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Students in the school district of Philadelphia head back to school tomorrow. This year, in addition to the usual emotions and preparations that come with heading back to class, students and parents are dealing with the impact of SEPTA cuts, affecting how thousands of kids get to and from school. I spoke about that with the superintendent of the Philadelphia School District, Dr. Tony Watlington.
Dr. Watlington, it's great to see you. Thank you for taking some time as we get ready for this new school year.
Thank you so much. I am absolutely honored to be here with you.
I'm going to start with something that families have been hearing a lot about, which are the changes that are coming to SEPTA and what that is going to mean for them and for their kids getting to school. Are you confident that kids can get to school and get there safely with these new schedules?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. It is something that keeps me up at night, because we have over 52,000 young people in our city who depend on public transportation to get themselves to school. And getting to school is no fault of their own. If there are interruptions, I get it. We have to make some hard decisions in the city. But so I would be less than genuine if I told you that there will be no impacts. I anticipate there will be some impacts to students' ability to get to school every day and on time. What I can also tell you is that we're working with families and our students to try to help them with every workaround. We're encouraging them to carpool to the extent they can. We're encouraging them to take advantage of our program where we provide $300 per household for bringing a family bringing their children to school. And we're letting our families know that we will not penalize children who are late through no fault of their own. However, it is really important that we do everything we can to get our children in school every day, at least 90% of every month and 90% of the school year, so that we can keep this momentum going with regard to test scores going up, graduation rates going up, and the dropout numbers going down.
Do you foresee any kind of change to make sure that you can have kids in school, like like using your buses, for example, or some other kind of solution. Do you think you have anything else that you could offer?
Sure. People ask me all the time, why don't you just run yellow school buses? Well, number one, there's a shortage of bus drivers. I just looked the other day and saw 32 vacancies in terms of bus drivers. And that's a problem not just in Philadelphia, but across urban and, quite frankly, some of the rural districts across the country. Number two, Philadelphia is the nation's 6th largest city. It is not feasible to think that we can address student transportation through replicating yellow school buses. Now, we have 25,000 plus children who ride on the yellow school buses, but when you get into a city, the nation's 6th largest, with such density of populations and traffic and a shortage of bus drivers, we are dependent on in the city of Philadelphia, the nation's 6th largest city, on public transit. And so it's important that we fulfill our obligation to make sure that we do what we can for our kids to be able to get to school.
Count on NBC10 to help you navigate the SEPTA cuts and figure out a transportation plan for you and your family. Just scan the QR code on your screen to download our free NBC10 app. We have information on alternate routes, fare hikes, and more. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
On this episode of NBC10 at Issue, we've been focusing on the SEPTA funding crisis. And there is a lot to talk about, more than we could fit here today. So we've put my full interviews with Democratic House Speaker Joanna McClinton and Republican Senate President Pro Tem Kim Ward in a new episode of Battleground Politics. And while you're there, also check out my conversation earlier this month with State Senator Joe Picozzi on SEPTA and figuring out funding for transit. He's a Republican who represents Northeast Philadelphia. You can see that interview in another episode of my Battleground Politics podcast. Those episodes are available to stream right now on NBC10.com, the NBC10 app, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts. That does it for this edition of NBC10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.